I'm Kathy Klotz, Executive Director of Intermountain Therapy Animals and Reading Education Assistance Dogs, the R.E.A.D. program. R.E.A.D. was born in November of 1999 when we first brought therapy dogs into the Salt Lake City Library to be reading companions for children. We knew we were onto something great, but we really had no idea what a journey it would be and how the program would capture the hearts and minds of children and adults worldwide. The R.E.A.D. program is respected and endorsed by educators, librarians, parents, and kids everywhere. It has literally spread around the world, reaching thousands of children throughout the United States, into Canada, the United Kingdom, Europe, and as far away as South Africa and Slovenia. Our continuing efforts to introduce children to the joys of reading and books help to lay the foundation for a lifetime. Succeeding at reading is vital to children's eventual success at school, on the job, in socioeconomic achievement, and even to their health. We've learned a lot over the years, and we're always eager to learn more and share it. So we're pleased to bring you this series of videos designed to help handlers in their ongoing quest for succeeding at reading. In this video, one of our R.E.A.D. staff, Nancy Brooks of Minneapolis, Minnesota, describes some of the things to consider when wading into the world of children's books to help you select the very best ones for each child you'll be reading with.
When I first became a R.E.A.D. team, I had no clue. I had a bunch of books that I just thought were really cute that had been attractive to me. However, as I was reading more and more with different kids, I found out that there were some features in books that just didn't work so well, or some that worked really well. So what I thought we'd talk about today is some of the books that we use that I have found to be successful in a R.E.A.D. session. One, the binding is one of the most important things. If I'm going to invest money in a book, I want a hardcover book, something that's going to last. Softcover books like this are fun, they're cheap, they're affordable for the kids, but after reading them several times, the pages just fall out. So if you're going to invest in a book, I recommend something hardcover. In addition, this is a board book. These are made out of cardboard, and these are intended for younger readers. This is not necessarily the best thing to offer a different reader because, as one child told me, that's a baby book. Okay, so you have to be careful if you have a board book. Now, I do have a couple good board books that are intended for a parent to talk through with a child, so the content is a little more upscale and it's made out of cardboard that it would last. But generally, board books may not be appropriate for your R.E.A.D. session. You'll have to decide for your reader. And another thing to consider when you're looking at a book to read, especially if you're in a library program, you want a book that you can address in that session. So if your library session is about 15-20 minutes, most of the children's picture books, you tend to be able to finish in the 15-20 minutes. If you have a longer book, then you have a challenge. If that child doesn't finish it, what do? You don't want to send one of your personal books home with that child, so you just have to figure out what to do. Do you leave them as a cliffhanger and you finish that book the next time? Usually it's better to read a library book if it's a longer one. The other idea is if your book is too short or the child does such a nice job reading and they finish early, what are you going to do in those last few minutes? I always have joke books with me because there's always something fun to do with the joke books. Poetry books are good. Poems are good. Any of those kinds of things to finish up those last few minutes where you don't have to read the whole book. You could just flip open for a few pages and have fun there. Text is something important to look at in the book. Poodlena Pompadour is one of my favorite books, especially for those of you guys with poodles. This is a wonderful book to look at. One of the things that never occurred to me as an adult reader was to consider the font. The font in this book is not very user-friendly for a young reader. I found some particular readers having trouble with these words. Also, the format on the pages. In this particular book, I'd have some readers, they would read straight across the two pages. So by knowing what my reader is doing, this stage in the book I would know if they're really a sophisticated reader and they can figure that out, and they would know to read down the page. But every now and then you'll get a younger reader that isn't just quite sure and they'll just read across the page. So look for features like this in your book that might confuse your reader, and you want to help them to be successful in their book, and this is a good way to do that. Anticipate what's happening in your book. Another idea is Martha blah blah. Depending on your reader, you'll want to keep track of what's happening on each page. So for instance, in this Martha page, she can talk, but only because she eats alphabet soup. Well, they changed the recipe of the alphabet soup, and now she talks, but you can't understand what she's saying. And that's what's happening on this page here. So you have the text of the story in the normal font. But then you also have the word bubble here that Martha is saying. But because she didn't eat the whole can of alphabet soup here, she's not making sense. So her word bubble has an asterisk with a translation of what she's trying to say. So there is a lot going on in this page. The words are generally appropriate for most readers, but what's the movement on the page can get a little difficult. Sometimes you'll have kids just fly through and read the text, but if they don't read what Martha's saying, they miss a big piece of it. And on this particular page, if they can't make sense of what Martha's saying, then they miss an even bigger piece. So that's why it's important to know what's happening on the book and help the reader walk through that. Next up is to talk about the number of words that are in the book. Sometimes if you have a book with too few words, it can appear too young and too babyish. Sometimes if you have a page that's way too full of many words, then it also confuses the reader or just frustrates them that there's no way they can tackle all of this one. Francine is a fabulous book. I just love this one. Each page has just the right amount of text on it. It's not too full, it's not too empty, and it's just a manageable amount of text for the reader to read. What's nice with this book is it has a nice rhythm and rhyme to it, so you have the rhythm that helps the child make it through the book a little easier. Sometimes you've got a child who really doesn't care about reading, doesn't really want to read, sees no reason to read. So if you can bring in something different instead of a book all the time, like maybe a magazine. There's a lot of magazines available now in the public libraries and the schools that can be geared towards topics that children want to know about. And then, of course, comic books. Comic books are something I don't really buy anymore because they're kind of expensive compared to the price of a book, and they don't last very long because they're made of that thin paper. A good alternative now is something like this, a graphic novel. It looks like a comic book with all the boxes in it with the text and the word bubbles. And if you look at the number of words on some of these pages, it's even more than what's in a classic children's book. So the child is actually reading more words, but they don't feel like it because it feels like it's something fun. It's not a boring book. And there are all kinds of graphic novels out these days. Another thing that I was totally unaware of when I started the READ program, I had a child come and sit down, and she brought a book to me, and she said, "It's a chapter book." Okay, it's a chapter book. I had no idea the significance of graduating to a chapter book. So this is one of my favorite ones, Down, Girl, and Sit. This is the name of the two characters in the book. It has the different chapters with the characters. There are two kinds of chapter books. This one has one whole story throughout the book, just different adventures. This is a different chapter book. Every single chapter is different. So you can read one chapter and come back another time and read another chapter. Where if you read a book like this one, you're kind of left hanging until you can finish that one, which might be appropriate depending on what kind of child you have. If you're in a school session, it might just excite them enough to say, I want to hurry back and read next week so I can finish this story. Language is another topic to talk about. So with many of the schools and libraries that we're in, we have English language learners. And this is the book called The Great Dog Wash. They also make this in a hardcover book, and it's great. What I like about this one is this story has all the English, and then it's in Spanish. So I've had some kids in a Spanish immersion program come, and they'll read the Spanish words, which is great because Sassy doesn't know any Spanish. But then I'd like them to read the English so that Sassy could understand what's happening in the story. So these dual language books are just great. Another aspect with language is to talk about cultural issues. So this particular book, it's written in English. It has Spanish words inserted in there, and it's also around a cultural topic. So let's talk about themes. So I always like to have books that are about dogs, of course. It's a Reading Education Assistance Dogs program, so it's really nice to have dog books. Now, granted, if a child brings up a different book, we will read that too. But the ones that I usually have in my pile are about dogs. And this particular one with language is Can Dogs Talk? So the kids get a kick out of this particular book because it was signed by the author to Sassy. Nice. And this one talks about dog language. So that opens up a whole nother conversation talking about, well, what do you think Sassy would say and how is Sassy communicating? So we have this whole idea of now dog language. Speaking about Sassy, she is a Sheltie, so of course we have Sheltie books and, okay, collie books too, but we pretend they're Shelties. So having breed books with your particular breed or a dog that's even the same color that's always kind of fun. The kids can relate to that a little easier too. We have guinea pigs and bunnies. Sometimes it's kind of fun to read a book like this because then they're obviously reading to my dog, and I have guinea pigs, so then we can say what's it like to have Sassy, my dog, and the guinea pigs back and forth. And someday it'd be fun to have a rabbit. You can have those whole conversations there. Another theme that's kind of fun to talk about are dogs that have jobs. This is a book about a therapy dog. There's also service and assistance dogs, there are rescue dogs. It's really pretty fun to have a dog while you're reading a book about dogs at work. Holidays are kind of fun to talk about with your children. Is it appropriate to talk about that particular holiday with that particular child? Not all cultures celebrate birthdays. Not all cultures celebrate Christmas. So you have to make sure that's appropriate. So we were in a children's hospital program. So we had a little girl come in, and she picked this up and she said, "Oh, I love this book." It's classic Christmas songs with dog words to them. And so this little girl sat down to Sassy, and she promptly sight read this book singing these Christmas songs with these doggy words. So Sassy was staring at her like she was the best singer ever in the world, and it was a wonderful session. So I always like to give this example because you never really know. You wouldn't think of this as a classic read book, but it was so successful for both my dog and that reader. Then we have the issue of pre-readers or early readers. I had talked a little earlier about how the softcover books don't last very long. And here's a prime example. I put a coil binding on here. This is my third version of this book, and they don't make it anymore, so I've tried to protect it. This is a book that I'll offer for a child who doesn't know how to read very well yet. This sweet little girl, she sat down, she said, "Well, I don't know how to read." And I said, "That's okay, Sassy doesn't either." The premise of this book, it's my dog's the best, he's big, my dog's the best, he's small, and it goes through the whole book like this. I said to the little girl, "Okay, you read this part." Now, she can't read, but I say, "Okay, so read this part," and it says, "My dog's the best." So she parrots after me, "My dog's the best." Then I read the next part, "He's big," and then I said, "Okay, this is your part, you read this part." So she wasn't really reading in the classic sense, but she was interacting with the book, she was turning the pages, she was connecting words to text here. When we get to the end of the book, all the dogs in the book are here on this page. And this is great fun. They're at a dog show. And then we can point out here, so where is Sassy? And there's a little tiny dog right here. And it takes a while. It's kind of a Where's Waldo picture, and you find Sassy. And then, of course, we like to end it. What Sassy's thinking. I'm the best. Good Dog Carl books. They have a couple pages in the beginning of words that set the story and a couple pages of words that end the story. And all the rest of the book is these beautiful pictures describing what the dog and the child are doing throughout the book. So it really is pretty fun. But you don't have to have only a wordless book to work through with the readers. And it's not necessarily just pre-readers. Some of these books that have such gorgeous pictures in them, anybody can tell a story with this. Another one for pre-readers or early readers are alphabet books. This one is so wonderful because it's by Sandra Boynton, and she has a beautiful sense of humor, and her books are so fun. So we can have the child trace with their finger what the letter is. This is C. C is for cat, for clean. And then, of course, on the next page, you can draw the D. D is for dogs and dirty. So we've talked a lot about books that might be appropriate, that you might consider using some ideas. There are also a number of books that are inappropriate. Have you considered there might be inappropriate books for reading? Not just the topic, but the presentation. Hugs and Kisses is one of the sweetest, absolutely sweetest books I've ever seen. It's all about a mother and a dog. The dog is going through the farmyard, and he ends up saying, "Mother's hugs and kisses are the best," which is a beautiful book, just not on the read blanket. So you don't want to be inviting the hugs and kisses from a child to you. This is a book that's more appropriate with a mother and a child. You probably have experienced some of these books that get pretty distracting. This is Monkey with the Tool Belt by Chris Monroe. She is an amazing author. She's got several books out now. There's a lot going on this page. So as long as you know this book and you know what's coming up, you just kind of help your reader through each of these scenes. Now, generally, if you'd read the book, you'd read here, you read here, read here, read here, read here. But this particular page just invites exploring and tasting each one of these little vignettes. So you might not be reading classically left to right, top to bottom, but just exploring this page with this book. Every time I hear this title, it just makes my ears cringe. I Got Two Dogs. This book is by John Lithgow. I hate to not use a great book because of this title. So in my own head, I say, I've got two dogs. But it's also a wonderful teaching tool to say, it may sound cute to say, I got two dogs, But the proper way to say that would be, I've got 2 dogs. So you can talk about slang, you can talk about poor grammar and stuff like that. I have a bonus book that I just love to no end that I have to show you. So here's the front. Here's the end. This book is called Bow Wow Bug's a Bug. Here's the map of Bow Wow's neighborhood. Here's Bow Wow. Here's the bug. It's a graphic novel. It's wordless. And it tells its own story. I just love this. And if you go to this author's website, it's the same way. There are no words on the website. You have to make your way through the whole website. It's kind of frustrating, but it's kind of cool. So here I am with this brand new book. I'm in a library program. I've got this reader here. He did a beautiful job, so I know he was a competent reader. And we had a few minutes left of the session, and I said to him, hey, Sassy's got a new book. Would you like to try this out and let me know what you think? Sure. So he sits down and starts reading. He gets to the second page, and he said, there's no words. I know. That's what makes it so interesting. Oh, okay. So he starts describing, and he's describing in great detail everything to Sassy and showing her the picture, and he's going on and on and on about this book. And I thought, yes, this is fantastic. This book works. I love it. Hour later, I get another kid, and I do the same thing. Hey, it's a new book. Would you like to try it? Okay. He sits down, and he says, there's no words. I said, I know. That's what makes it interesting. Oh, there's a dog, there's a lady, there's a dog, there's a lady. Yeah, it's a book. Okay, lesson learned. So anyway, you have to be a little sensitive to the kind of books that you offer the different kinds of kids. One of the tricks that I've used with my books, when I take them to the library, I only have 5 with me, because I know if I came with 5, I'm going home with 5, because sometimes it's really easy for your books to get mixed in with the library books. Another trick that I've used is I've created a stamp here that says Sassy, Reading Education Assistance Dog, so I know any book that has this is mine. So as a READ team, you do not have to acquire an addiction of books like some of us have. You only need a couple books in your stash just to have ready. So for instance, you always want to have your read session to be successful to that reader. So sometimes a kid will come in and he'll plop down and he'll have grabbed a book without really looking at it to know if it's his appropriate level. So I always have my stash of books behind me at different levels so that if that child is having a hard time, I can see him frustrated, I can say to him, oh, I'm sorry, but Sassy's heard that story and she's sleeping. Would it be okay if we read one of her favorite books? And that kid throws that book away so fast and says, yeah, give me another one. So anything to help make that session more successful to him. So that's why I always have books with me. I don't have to purchase my own. I could go to the library ahead of time and pick out half a dozen books and just have them behind me ready. But it's just easier for me personally to have my own stash. My favorite gift now from anybody who knows me is another children's book. So once people know that you're into children's book, or at least I tend to get all these gifts, which is great. If people want donate to our group, quite often they will donate books. Like when we have programs with Girl Scouts or something like that, they find it more fun instead of giving us money to donate books to us. So we'll give some of those books to the teams and some of those books to the READ participants. There are a number of grants available. If you just start looking and keep your eyes open on what some of the grants are, there are a million grants out there to help, especially certain areas of certain neighborhoods and reading levels to help get them some new books. And once you start looking for cheap books, if you go to the half-price bookstores, if you go to the discount sections, you can really find some really nice bargains. So if you decide that you're going to reward your reader with a book, it's always nice to have a new book and to have a selection of new books. So it really does empower them when they get to pick the book that they want. One of the techniques that we talk about in the basic read training video is about photographing the book. So it really even makes it more special if you take this brand new book that this child has selected and have your dog's own photograph in there.
Thanks for watching. We hope you'll check out the other videos in our Succeeding at Reading series. If you have questions, we're happy to help. Please contact us at any time. From all of us at Intermountain Therapy Animals, thank you for your time and dedication to becoming an ever more skilled READ team.
Special thanks to Pia and Jimmy Zankel, and the Laura J. Niles Foundation, whose generous support of R.E.A.D. makes this series possible.